Hi, this is Cale from Cherry Hill Academy. I'm going to talk to you today about the various types of guitars that are available to buy, because I know for parents buying a child a guitar, if you don't come from a musical background yourself, it can be a very daunting task. So when you go to music stores, there's going to be all kinds of guitars. There's going to be acoustic guitars, electric guitars. Today I'm going to tell you about the differences between two different types of acoustic guitars and electric guitars. So for acoustic guitars, we're talking about any instrument that has a hollow body and is loud enough that you can hear it without the aid of any kind of amplification. So within the category of acoustic guitars, the two types you're going to see are classical guitars and steel string acoustics. So classical guitars, this is what I have in my hands right now. Classical guitars have nylon strings, so the treble strings are kind of a plastic type of material. And in general, these are wider, thicker strings than steel strings, and there's less tension on the strings than you would have in a steel string acoustic guitar. The other thing about the strings is they're spaced further apart, because these instruments were designed with the intention of being played by the fingers of the right hand instead of a pick. So if we could zoom in to the strings, you can see there's plenty of space between the strings for me to put my fingers. So there's some advantages and disadvantages to having a little more space between the strings. I actually think they're all advantages, because this is the guitar I'm most comfortable with. But it does make it easier for the fingers of the right hand to play individual strings. For people with really small hands over here on the left-hand side, it can be harder to play chords like the G chord, where you have to spread out your fingers between a lot of strings. But some chords, like the C chord, where you have to hold down an individual string and you have open neighbor strings right next to it, it can be easier to let those strings ring. And if the strings were closer together, you might actually mute them with the side of your finger like this. So a few things to think about with a classical guitar. So this particular steel string guitar actually has a very similar body size to my classical guitar, because I like the smaller body size. But there's a wide variety of body sizes you can get, from this to like the Dreadnought, Concert Grand body styles, and it's just what you're comfortable with. But it's all the same instrument. The notes are all in the same place, all the chords are the same. If we can zoom in, you can see that there's less space between the strings. So it's a little bit tougher to get all the fingers between the strings. Chords like the G chord here are a little bit easier, because these two strings are a little bit closer together. You don't have to spread your hand out so much. But chords like the E and the A, where we have to cram a lot of fingers all on one fret, those get a little bit tougher. So if you have bigger hands, it's kind of hard to get everything where it needs to be. But with practice, any of them can work. In general, the tension on steel string acoustics is going to be a lot higher than for a nylon string classical acoustic. Which is definitely something to think about, especially for young children starting out to play. So with electric guitars, they can be solid body or semi-solid, but the main thing with electric guitars is without an amplifier, they're very quiet. You can hear them usually if you're the one playing, but across the room it's pretty hard to hear unless you buy an amplifier. So that adds a few things to your list when you're going to shop for a guitar. Not only do you have to buy a guitar, you also have to buy an amplifier, and you have to buy a cable to connect the guitar to the amplifier. So at least 3 things, and the salesman will probably try to talk you into a few more. So electric guitars have steel strings, but the tension is usually a lot lower than in an acoustic steel string guitar. And generally the action is closer, so the strings are closer to the frets, so they're easier to press down. Strings are easier to press down than on an acoustic guitar. The other thing you get with electric guitars, since it's electronic, you get a really wide variety of sounds. You can get a fairly clean sound. You can add distortion to it. You get depending on the amp you get, you can get like these cool echo effects, which are a lot of fun to play with. But again, the instrument works exactly the same as an acoustic instrument. So all the notes are in the same place. You can learn on an acoustic and then move on to electric, and everything's going to be where you remember it. So if you'd like a little more advice on buying a guitar, please don't hesitate to give us a call at the Cherry Hill Academy of Piano and Guitar.